Welcome, I'm Melba Persico. Come with me, meet new people, and share their experiences as we take our culture to the world. And today our guest is Dr. Lennie Amores. Welcome, Lennie. Please, could you share some information about yourself?
So I am an assistant professor of Spanish, and I teach all levels from language to literature. And as far as my interest, I love arts and crafts and sewing. And I live in Wilmington, Delaware.
Hey, thank you. Yes, and we've known each other for a while. We were at grad school together in Miami. And so you teach Spanish, as you said, and I know that you've spent a lot of time in Spain. And dare I say it? Yes, you're even married to a Spaniard.
Yes.
So you're well immersed in Spain and Spanish culture, I'm sure. So tell me though, when you went to Spain for the first time, how was that? What were your first impressions? Did you have any culture shock experiences?
Well, in my very first week, I think that the biggest thing was coming from Indianapolis, Indiana, from the Midwest, going to somewhere that's very urban. I was a culture shock just that you could walk everywhere and that the downtown or the city is actually a safe place. That's a place where you can just walk and there's coffee shops and things like that. And from my experience in Indiana, you needed a car to get anywhere, right? Either even if you're in the city, it wasn't somewhere where you just want to walk around, go to the river. But in Seville, Spain, I really like the idea of just being able to walk around.
So this was my
culture shock.
Okay, so tell us what that is.
This is not a KKK. I am from Indiana, where the KKK started. So I've seen KKK rallies. And when I saw people dressed up like this for Holy Week, which is the week before Easter, in a procession, everything's dark, there's candles, it's at night, and I saw people walking around looking like this. I got really depressed. I was really sad. I didn't understand what Holy Week was. So this was a culture shock for me. I couldn't get over that week. I wanted to go home. I wanted to go back to Spain once I saw all of this, since it wasn't ever explained to me. And I did learn that it is a celebration of the Passion of Christ. So they act out, the last week before the resurrection. So this was my big culture shock. Right. And it turns out that at that time, who is now my husband, my boyfriend, is part of this brotherhood. And now my son is part of this brotherhood. So they wear this outfit that looks very, very similar to KKK. So what
does the hat or what? I'm sure it has a name.
Yes.
What does what does it represent?
So imagine, like at a church, you have the steeple. Okay. So this goes up to the heaven. Oh. And the fact that they cover themselves and you can't see, they become anonymous. So these are called Nazarenos or Nazarenes, like someone from Nazareth. Right. And they're penitents. So they walk, and it's kind of like confession. When Catholics go to confession, they go in a box and confess, and it's only to them, and it's only to the priest. So they're anonymous. So this is kind of them being penitent and confessionary. A lot of times they will have a promise. So they'll think of a promise that they've made, like a vow that they've made, and then they'll walk those 10 hours during this procession thinking about the promise that they've made.
Okay.
So yes. So nothing to do with covering yourself to go burn a cross, right?
Right. Yes, I can imagine, how you felt, but eventually it was explained to you and you understood. So how was it though? I know you would have, as a student of Spanish, learn about Spain and aspects of Spanish culture. but actually being there and living there, how was it for you, being able to adapt to that culture?
I think it was easy for me in the sense that I felt like at least in Sevilla where I was, maybe because I was a study abroad student the first time that I went, people were really open and I could have conversations with people. It was easy to talk to people. I feel like that might be a stereotype in Southern Spain, but people are more social or sociable. You can talk to people. They're not awkward to talk to. Even if, you're Spanish, if you're still learning Spanish and your Spanish is not great, then people make effort to talk to you. And so I think that that really helped. I would also say that part of it was kind of understanding that I am in another place, so it's kind of like, how do you not fit in, but how do you do things, try new things. So I was definitely open. There are certain foods that I still don't eat, but I did try a lot. So I tried a lot of things. And I would also say that I think that one aspect, I think, of being a Black woman in Spain, and at that point, especially in Sevilla, where there weren't a lot of Black people yet, I think it's something that's changing in Spain. And you'll see that with at least, the Black authors that are coming out in Spain right now, who are writing, and artists and things like that. But there weren't a lot of Black people. So there was that also kind of going with other study abroad students. I traveled with my other Black female friends. So there were 3 Black girls. And on one hand, we were kind of looked at as exotic. So we did get a lot of extra attention from people, and depending on how we were dressed, whether we were characterized as coming from Africa or if we were coming from the United States, depending on what you wore. If you wore a book bag, then they think you're from America. But if you wear a dress, they think you're. It was very interesting the way that people would perceive us from the outside. But I do think that because of being different, that people were more open to kind of be curious and ask us questions and things like that. So I think that helped. That helped that we could kind of, represent, I guess, United States in a different way.
Yes. And were there any stereotypes, let's say, of people from America, let's say Black Americans, that existed among the people you interacted with in Spain that you were able to dispel by your interactions with them?
So I think that they didn't really have well, they do have stereotypes, probably what they see on TV, but they didn't have the same stereotypes that we have in the United States of Black women. For example, I kind of felt a little bit freer where there's not that kind of angry Black woman stereotype that they would have, because they haven't experienced that in their culture of this idea of an angry Black woman. So that kind of frees you as far as like dating, right? Where I feel like in the States, sometimes we have that people assume that we're like that.
We're aggressive.
Yeah. That we're just aggressive or something, and they don't have that kind of stereotype. But on the other hand, they have a lot of stereotypes about American women, of being like easy, about promiscuous, about they come and are having sex with all these guys and things like that. So they or did see, so they have these kind of American like stereotypes about American white girls that are not the same, right? So when they talk to someone who is Black American, they don't know how to fit, like it doesn't equate with them. Like they have these things of what they think of an American should be like, especially an American female, and then you're totally different from that.
Right?
Yeah. And the other thing is, they couldn't get beyond that you could just be American, that you can be American, that you can be from the United States, born in the United States, and that your parents are not from somewhere
else.
So like someone would ask me, where are you from? I say, I'm from the United States. And where are your parents from? The United States. And where are your grandparents from? The United States. And I don't know how far. Do you know, slavery? So, and then I'll go, yeah. And then they get, kind of like awkward because the whole Spaniards and Portuguese, right? They're like, oh yeah. But who from your family is from Africa? I'm like, someone from my generations back is, but I don't know who that person is, right? So like it was hard for them to understand that. And the other thing is, I think that they have these kind of stereotypes about I guess it's kind of like the movies, the kind of romance comedy or the comedy movies, right? Yeah, definitely they have a lot of the images that they see from movies,
from the media,
films.
from TV.
Yeah, from TV films and things like that. Yeah, so I think that that's very interesting. And I think that Spaniards do not like to bring up race, right? And as a Black American, we talk about race a lot. It's part of our conversations. It's a part of it. We've experienced, certain microaggressions, and we talk about those things. So marrying into a Spanish family, I've had to have a lot of these conversations with them, and that's going beyond, just the kind of your first impressions and things like that. But I just wanted to tell you that that was one thing that was different for me. Being raised, in a Black home and things like that, and talking about issues like that. There were certain issues, there were certain topics that if I brought something up, then someone would say, oh, you're being sensitive, and I would say, no, I'm not being sensitive, So I told you about this, right? Where I wanted to explain, what's the connection behind that. But there were other instances. That same year abroad, we went to Carnival. So Carnival is in Cadiz, or at least in Spain. There's different places. Tenerife has a Carnival, but Cadiz is a very famous Carnival, and I had not seen so much blackface in my life. There were angel mamas. They had their face painted. They put booties on. They had like the whole angel mama, like red scarf with the scarf on the side. They painted their lips and made their lips extra big. I was so offended. And of course I wanted people to know this. But at that point it didn't register. Now there's some new things coming out with second generation Black people being born in Spain who are bringing up those issues, but those things were not brought up back then. We were kind of some of the first generations of young Black people, in Spain. So that was definitely a difference that was difficult to navigate in Spain. Every year it's become easier. And now with my in-laws, they can talk about those issues. When they say something like my mother-in-law says something like, estoy trabajando como una negra, I'm working like a Black woman, then I'll stop her and be like, just realize what you said. This comment comes from slavery.
Right.
So those were some things that were interesting to kind of navigate. And of course I have a different situation because I ended up marrying into the family. So I was there for that entire year in Spain. And then I went back to Spain to teach English as an English teacher assistant. So I lived in a little town called Priego de Córdoba, where I was literally the only Black person in the town. And there was one Chinese family and there was one Moroccan family. So we were like the different people of the town.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have to say that if anything, understanding how maybe in the States we're very black and white, but in Spain it's like we just want to kind of not even recognize that there's race sometimes, except when
makes
we
life
call
easier.
someone except when we identify something, then we can say el gitano, el negro, el chino, etc.
Yeah, I can imagine it was, those were interesting experiences for you, and it's good that you were able to sensitize your family, your in-laws, to some of these issues that maybe they just took for granted or never even thought about, these things. But now through their interactions with you, they could think a little more deeply about these things and be more sensitive to what you say and how you say and what you know. So
yeah, I've trained them.
yes, you have. So, you in addition to those 2 times that you mentioned in Spain, I know you spent a lot of time in Spain because before the pandemic, I think you used to go to Spain every year, right?
Yes.
For vacation and so on. So you had a lot of interaction with Spain and its culture. So what do you appreciate most about the people and their culture?
I have to appreciate the family and the fact that people are very, at least in Sevilla, there are some big difference between people from the south and the people from the north, and then there's the difference between people from the countryside and people from the city. But one thing that I've noticed, at least in southern Spain, is that people are really family oriented. For example, the holidays are very important, the traditions, the traditions that you have for eating with family, dinner time, lunchtime, those are all done together. Even if you go out with your family to the tapas bar and things like that. So I thought that is something that I really appreciate. Even if the family is small, right? I appreciate the multi-generational homes, and that is something that I felt like I connected with, coming from a lot of Black families in the States. I feel like there's a lot of multi-generational homes too. The grandmother is there, maybe an aunt, maybe an uncle, and with Spanish families, I see, there's a lot of grandparents. They don't just send their grandparents off to
nursing home or something.
to one of those homes or things like that. Yeah. So I really appreciate that. I also appreciate the kind of the celebration, the dance. I mean, this is of course Southern, these are stereotypes of the South, but people love to sing and dance and clap and get together and be loud. And I'm definitely someone that prefers kind of the company of people that are lively. So that is something. I also appreciate the kind of like tertulias or the sobremesa. So the tertulias are just like, kind of chats about different things. They could be intellectual conversations that you have with people. And I find those very interesting in Spain, but I also like the idea of the sobremesa, which is, after, like during your lunch, which is the biggest part of the day, that you're having just this big conversation when you're eating, versus, everyone on their own phone, and so I really like this kind of idea of just talking a lot. I love to talk, so I feel like Spaniards don't have a problem keeping up a conversation. Like I said, they're not socially awkward like sometimes we are here in the States.
Yeah, that's good. And of course that helps with the family and being together. And even as you said, not even if it's not just family, you get together with others and you could have really a good conversation. It's not just you rush and you eat and then you leave.
Yes. And that's why I think that I would hate to be a waiter in Spain, because they're not going to give you your what is it, your bill until the very end. But here in the States, as soon as you order your food, they're giving you the bill, right? Just like, hey,
get
they
out
want to clean your table and get the next person out. But you can't say it's going to be a 45-minute thing or 30-minute thing like in the States. They can't time out, the reservations like they do in the States, because people eat and they leave, but there they can sit at the table forever.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting. So now you've spent a lot of time in the States, as we established before. Have you had any opportunities to share your home culture with the people you've interacted with, in-laws and others?
I think so. I think that one thing that I've shared, well, I mean, I don't know if this is my home culture, but well, I can't cook, so I haven't brought any foods, but I have bought foods from Corte Inglés that were American foods and brought those back. And for example, like the baked potato, which you don't really have to cook anything, but putting all the toppings on. So I brought like some food and things like that back to my Spanish family and friends. But also, as I mentioned about the topics about race and like this race sensitivities and microaggressions, I think that is bringing some culture in the sense of, kind of an awareness back.
Yes, that's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that those conversations are important, and they're going to be even more important in Spain in the next few years. They are starting to be, and in the following years, where we have the second and third generation of Afro-descendant people, Chinese descendant people in Spain. And I think that maybe one of the things that I noticed about Spaniards, and it's part of the system, the job system, the unemployment is really high, is that people tend to want to be a funcionario, a civil servant. They want to have a government job. There's these oposiciones or exams that they have to take. And it's very, very hard to get a government job, but everybody wants one because of the stability.
Stability, right.
The pension it gives, but there's very few. So everyone is applying to the same jobs. So with say, for example, my brother-in-law, I've talked to him about, have you thought about, opening your own business? Have you thought about doing those kinds of things? And like talking to his family and things like that. So kind of like there's other ways to do things. Like you don't have to, just have this
work with the government. Yes.
This goal. So, I mean, it's not culture maybe, but it's just like thinking about, okay, these are ways that people think about how you do things in the United States. And, sometimes it works. It works where you don't have to just kind of follow this plan that everyone follows. And then with my own husband, he decided to change careers when he moved to the States, which he was going for a government job too, but changed to education. So, I wish I had something better to say, though.
That's what fine. I brought to the actually, that is a part of the culture in a sense, because and when you were saying that, I'm thinking about Diana, and a lot of people think like that too. You gotta have work with this ministry or this, which is part of the government. It's a civil service. So and I remember saying to one of my former students who has a PhD. And so I said, build your own table, do your own thing, create your own business.
Right.
Can you do consulting or something, or, use your skills in other ways? Because I think everybody just has this mindset, okay, I have to work with the university or with the Ministry of Education or something like that, So I think we have the same kind of mindset, and it's cultural. It's part of our culture. So.
No, it's definitely the risk taking is more part of the United States culture, which can be to its detriment, right? Where they're like, I'm gonna risk all my retirement to start this. But at the same time, that's also that kind of entrepreneur spirit is part of the culture that I think in Spain people are kind of, you know, they're kind of scared of that because, you know, there are instances of failed businesses and things like that, but so are there here. So yeah, definitely. Okay, I can consider that then part of something of the culture, or at least ways of thinking about doing things that are different that I bring back with me when I talk to my Spanish family and friends and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and as an educator now, how have your experiences in Spain impacted your life as an educator?
So definitely I want to show them, you know, all the good things, but I also want to be real with my students and show them some of the things that aren't the best. You know, students have this kind of romantic vision, of course, of their study abroad, but I want them to know that they're going to be struggling with certain things, especially if, you know, especially if they especially if they're not open, you know, they're not open to other people's curiosity. Some people's curiosity can come off as microaggressions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people's curiosity is just not curiosity and is just racism. So I want our students to know that, or sexism, or you know, homophobia, things like that. But another thing that, because when I went to Spain, I thought that I knew enough of the language, but part of like the idiomatic expressions that people use show you what the culture is, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I teach those words and things that are not in our textbook too, and I say, you know, there's another way that people say this, and it's this, and this shows, you know, what is on people's mind, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
what their preoccupations are, what their anxieties are in a culture. So I definitely show all of the things that they're going to enjoy, especially when I teach the culture part. And then when I teach literature, I make a point of showing how these works are kind of they're not 100% representative of the entire culture, but there are kind of jewels in there that kind of show you what are some of the anxieties or some of the things that we can celebrate, you know, in Spanish culture.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I try to bring that. And then also as far as like language learning, you know, I tell them that you have to get out there and you have to speak. So I do prioritize, you know, speaking activities that are kind of that are more real, right? That this is what you're going to encounter when you go to a restaurant, or this is what you're going to encounter, you know, if you're trying to go to a market and try to you know, buy something. So
Right, and so that's good, because, you know, having had those real life experiences, you can bring those to the classroom and definitely help your students, you know, especially as you mentioned with the language, the nuances of the language, with the idioms and so on. You know, you definitely don't get that from the textbook, and
that's the best word, nuances. Yeah, that's the best word, nuances, because there are a lot of those, and I think that sometimes the textbooks are so general that you know, these is very general and it's non-specific to a country. So then you can say, well, in this country they do it like this, but in this country, you know, it's more like this here.
So in general now, what are some general lessons that you've learned that you would like to share from living abroad?
I would say that, and I keep coming back to this, to be open, to try new things, to get out and talk to people, to try to be as social as you can, you know, given the restraints of a pandemic, if it's still a pandemic, but to really get to talk to people, because that is going to help you with language learning, and B, to kind of really understand what, what people think and how they live their lives. Another lesson I think in study abroad is to really try to, it's part of being open, but not to get upset. Try not to get upset when there's a situation that is, uncomfortable, or someone is asking you questions. And I'm gonna be honest with you, it's especially gonna happen, I believe, if you are someone who is non-white. They're gonna ask you lots of questions. They're gonna be curious. They may touch your hair, and this happened to my Asian friend too, asking questions. And and a lot of times it's curiosity. One time I was sitting, for example, on the bus, and there's an elder woman looking at me the whole time. She's just staring at me, like up and down, like, and that's one thing, at least in Sevilla, and I think it's all of Spain, but definitely in Sevilla, people will stare at you. They're staring at you. They know you're staring. They
know that you know.
but they don't try to like play it off. Like here in the States, we'll be like, we'll just try to like do something, like try not to like let that person know that you're looking at them. But no, it's like definitely like whole head staring at you, going like this, and you're like looking right back at them. You're staring at me. So I finally just say, hola. And then she's like so happy that I spoke to her. Like she was waiting to be spoken to so that she could start and ask questions, and where are you from? And sometimes they'll say things that, a little microaggression-ish, like you look like my rag doll that I had when I was a little kid.
But of course, that's
little brown rag dolls.
That's meant to be complimentary now. But of course, that's why you can't be too sensitive, right? You have to.
Is that complimentary?
No, I'm saying in her mind,
yes.
She probably thinks that it's a compliment.
Yes, because she had an effective kind of, you had an emotion, like a positive emotion towards that rag doll who was brown. And that is something that is also very of a little bit of a difference. You don't see a lot of little white kids in the States with black baby dolls. Like they normally get the same race of their baby doll. But in Spain, many, there's more black baby dolls than white baby dolls. It felt like it to me, at least in the storefronts and everything. And a lot of white kids have black baby dolls. So being open to those kinds of questions, and then when something is wrong, then just say something and find ways to kind of confront those situations that are not disrespectful. But yeah, I think the biggest lesson is being open, because you're going to experience some things that are a little bit off-putting. And then the other thing is, try new foods, go to different kinds of places that you wouldn't go to, go to the flamenco bar, go to those kind of things. Get out of your comfort zone is probably the biggest lesson.
Right, and that's the way you really get to experience a culture. That you don't want to go and just go to the same McDonald's and Burger King, the same places you have back home.
Yes, you want to go to the authentic places. You want to leave the tourist zone and like go to the real places outside of the tourist zone, because the tourist zone are catering to kind of international, a lot of times American, English, Northern European taste and people. So if you want to go off the beaten path a little bit and try one of those mom and pop kind of restaurants, that maybe it doesn't, it's not nicely decorated, but that they have really good food that are made by really good cooks or even grandmothers, right?
Yeah, to get more of an authentic experience there.
Yes.
in those places. Exactly. So to wrap up, what are your final thoughts on the importance in general of appreciating other cultures?
I think it's important to appreciate other cultures, because you really get to you really get to kind of work out those biases that you have in your head, those kind of stereotypes. If you really appreciate and get to know them, I think knowing and appreciate comes hand in hand. So you can separate the kind of romantic view from like the real view. And another thing with appreciation also comes kind of respect, right? So you can respect that other people do things differently. You can respect that, you know, this is something that is important in this culture and it's not important in this culture, but maybe, you know, neither culture is right, but they both have their own value, right?
Exactly.
These different kind of aspects have their own value, even though in your culture it might not be as important, right? So even when we talked about, you know, the kind of entrepreneurial spirit that I thought is missing from the Spanish culture, at the same time, I respect that idea of stability and kind of creating, and you need that stability, you know, to have a strong family and things like that. So appreciating that people, you know, kind of, you know, want to fit this kind of box or fit this mold, because in the end, for a lot of people, that creates less conflict, right? That creates less issues for them. So I think it's important to appreciate those differences. And if you understand different cultures, then you can kind of pick things from different cultures and kind of like create the best family culture for yourself, right? So there are things about the Spanish culture, which was not a part of my family culture or my husband's family culture, which is affection. And that, you know, you give 2 kisses in Spain when you see someone. There's a lot of just like close talking. People are, you know, this was a culture shock too, right? People are talking like this, you know, if they talk loud and if they spit when they talk, you're like, what? So this was very difficult. In my family, it's like, there's your side of the couch and there's your side of the couch. Like there's no closeness, physical closeness.
Yeah, there's something the Americans have about what personal space.
Yes.
So listen, sometimes I tell my students, you know, I get a little closer. I say, listen, in Hispanic culture, we don't have personal space. I said,
yeah. Yes. So, but at the same time, I realized that is something that I end up enjoying. I like having that kind of closeness, yes. Closeness, and I like that you kiss someone that when you meet them, because it kind of like, you know, you're able to be a little bit more vulnerable with people. So for my family culture, right, once I got married to a Spaniard, we have these different ways that we've been raised. We have different ways that our cultures influence how we are in our family. And then, you know, raising a child together, I think that pulling the good things, pulling the things that we both like about the cultures and putting them together, it really creates that kind of better experience for us. And I think someone who has experienced different cultures, they can value certain things from another culture that's not in theirs and pull that into their culture, into their own culture.
Yes. Thank you so much. That was beautifully expressed. And thank you so much for spending some time with us today, Lennie. And I want to thank our viewers for watching, and come with us. Watch the next episode. We're going to meet new people. We're going to learn from their experiences in our next episode of Our Culture to the World. Bye, Lennie.
Bye.
Thank you.